Hey.
I haven't seen you in your uniform for a while.
Yeah, that was on purpose.
Kind of turns me on.
There he is, General Patton in a neon vest. Wow.
They say 500,000 people watch the Boston Marathon here in New England.
Baby.
Hey, you behaving yourself?
There's something 984. We got multiple explosions. We need help down here.
We've got to decide who's running this, and we have to decide quickly.
It's terrorism.
We'll take it.
And let's get an evidence grid started right over there.
Clock is ticking. The world is watching.
The suspect seen on the surveillance cameras. 2 bombers.
We gotta find these guys before they do this to someone else.
We can't have our citizens on the streets with all these threats. Every inch of this city is getting searched. We're shutting it down.
A taxi picked up a guy matching White Hat's description. Could be he's on his way to New York.
Are there more bombs? Are there more bombs?
I want a lawyer.
No.
No, I have rights.
You ain't got shit, sweetheart.
What I saw today, good versus evil, love versus hate. There's only one weapon you have to fight back with. It's love. We wrap our arms around each other. I don't think there's any way that they can ever win.
Let's hear it. It's a New York audience. I am assuming a lot of you have seen Patriots Day. It's been playing around here for a while. I think it starts playing nationwide today, right?
Today,
It's
yeah.
the big day. Incredibly well made. Peter Berg's one of the best that we have. He does an amazing job with this film, sticks to the facts, and finds a way to shoot these scenes in a way that feels like you're there, like he's a documentary filmmaker in the moment. Jeff, what's it like? What's that like for you to watch?
It's really surreal to watch, you know, what I went through, and myself and the other officers from Watertown, and for them to make a movie and almost make it like a documentary and not a big Hollywood, you know, glorified production. They stuck very close to the facts of what transpired that day.
And I think what's so interesting about sticking close to the facts and the way that he portrays those scenes and you guys in those scenes is that it's confusing, it's chaotic. It doesn't portray you guys as obvious, glamorous heroes in a moment. You're all figuring it out as you go along like real human beings.
Yeah, it was chaotic. Most police shootings, you know, don't last more than 10 or 15 seconds with maybe 4 or 5 rounds of ammunition being fired. This lasted 8.5 minutes with half a dozen bombs being thrown, and probably between the Tsarnaev brothers and the Watertown police, you know, 400 or 500, 600 rounds of ammunition were fired. It was like a war zone at the time.
Did you ever expect that you would come across something like that in your career? I mean, obviously you're trained to handle what's thrown at you, but something like this, I can't imagine.
No, you know, at the time I'd been on the job for 34 years. And, you know, I had drawn my service pistol several times in the course of the job. I've never had to fire it at anybody. And
This is the first time you'd ever fired it at
this is the first time I ever fired my pistol, and the only time since, you know. You know, it's, you know, you may have to do it, and you don't look forward to doing it, but you have to do what you have to do. And that was necessary that day.
I'll talk about working with JK prior to the actual shooting the movie. Sorry.
Shooting the shooting.
As the words started coming out, I was like, oh, I'm already going down this hole. I don't know how to stop this. How did you guys work together? JK, what were some of your first questions before you started making the movie?
Well, we went out to the scene of the crime, and Jeff
took me through step by step and exactly what happened that night. I mean, I still shake my head about, in disbelief at the whole thing and the way it transpired and what he was able to do. Yeah, I mean, he walked me through it. He took me to the shooting range, and so I didn't look like an idiot firing the handgun. And yeah, we spent a lot of time together, just hanging out. Went on tour with him, hung out with him and Connie and his kids even sometimes, and just soaked up the Watertown vibe and hung out. Tried to get it right.
When you went to the shooting range with him and you saw the way he held a gun, was it important for you to sort of, in your character, capture exactly how he held the gun, or were you just trying to sort of capture, feel realistic holding the gun? Because you've played cops before, I'd imagine you've done that.
Yeah, and I had some training before and learned it and forgot it. Fortunately, the guys that actually need to know what they're doing don't forget it. Yeah, it was a combination of getting the correct procedure down, and coincidentally, he happens to be the firearms instructor for the Watertown Police Department. And then wanting to be, without doing a, kind of a rich little impression, wanting to try and be as close to who Jeff is as possible, including smoking those horrible things he smokes.
Do you still smoke this?
Yeah, unfortunately.
For those of you who don't know and who haven't seen, we've kind of alluded to what the moment is in the movie and in history that Jeff was a part of, but it was the shootout in Watertown between the Tsarnaev brothers and the Watertown police, where Jeff was the officer who took were they the fatal shots of Tamerlan Tsarnaev? I mean, I know he was then, he was run over by his brother.
Yeah, I had, what happened is the officers, when I arrived, were pinned down, and I made a decision to cut through some backyards and come up on their flank. And, I ultimately shot Tamerlan 9 times, and he just didn't want to go down. So.
What led to that decision to cut through the backyards?
Well, the officers that were initially there, the 3 officers, when I arrived, I was the 4th officer on scene, they were pinned down. And there was no advancing, there was no retreating. They were holding their ground and returning fire. And I just made the decision, something has to be done to bring this to an end, and I decided the best way to do it is a flanking assault from the side.
When you found out they were going to be making this film, because not that much time has passed since the bombing at the Boston Marathon, what were your first thoughts?
I was very apprehensive. I was afraid that Hollywood was going to distort the facts and make it something that it wasn't. But after speaking with Peter Berg, the director, and one of the major producers of the movie, Michael Radutsky, they reassured me over and over and over again that this was not going to be an exploitation of what happened. And they were going to stick to the facts and almost make it like a documentary, and they were true to their word.
Oh, they're very dedicated to not exploiting any aspect of the story, to the point where there's an extended period at the end of the film that features everybody who was affected and who was a part of the chase at that time, which clearly shows how significant it was and how much integrity they had going into the project. JK, was that important for you as well when they approached you to be a part of the movie? Did you want to make sure that you weren't a part of something that was going to become like a Hollywood action movie?
Yeah, 100%. And once Pete sort of explained to me Jeff's particular involvement, then my goal became to just recreate it as accurately as I could.
Is it a different beast for you when you're asked to portray someone that actually exists, especially someone that it's not someone that existed 70, 80, 150 years ago. It's someone 2-3 years ago
Right.
can sit next to you.
Yeah. It's a contemporary of mine. Yeah, it's this was a first for me. I mean, and there is an added responsibility, especially given the subject matter that I took very seriously, but also had a fun time with. I mean, the movie walks that line really nicely of that kind of in the trenches kind of humor that you find in I think military and the police and first responders and those kind of guys that need to find the likeness in their day-to-day life, and then when the doo-doo hits the fan, then they step up to the plate.
And that's something that Berg does incredibly well, not just in this film, but in his film Deepwater Horizon earlier this year, which is finding those moments before the incidents took place that really humanize people that are going to be a part of those incidents. He does it so well in such a short period of time. How do you work with him on making sure that those brief scenes that you're in at the beginning of the movie before the bombs go off really give the audience a sense of who this guy is? I mean, smoking those cigarettes is a great way to do it right away.
Yeah, that was definitely part of it. And driving in Jeff's personal van and shooting scenes in his actual house. I mean, we were talking about verisimilitude. Yeah. I mean, it was, if there was an opportunity to do something as realistically as possible, then that was what Pete wanted to do and what I wanted to do. And another great part about working with Pete is that you have, I mean, obviously they had this script that was very well crafted. And on the night of the shootout, I wanted to very accurately say exactly what Jeff had said that night in addition to doing what he did. But the previous scenes, the kind of slice of life stuff, the kind of getting to know the characters, that was a lot of improvisation and working with the local actors and trying not to be intimidated about my dialect and trying to sound like the guy.
The Boston dialect's a tough thing. You can go over the line pretty quickly if you're not careful.
Yeah, and that was one of my, and I'd never done it before, so I mean that was, I finally just hanging out with Jeff, getting to know him and just spend time with him. My brain would keep going back and forth between just, having a chat with a guy and getting to know a guy, and then just kind of listening to exactly how he's saying it. So I finally said, all right, listen, you mind, I'm just going to record you so I can just have a conversation and I can listen later for the sounds.
What was it like shooting the night, the shootout? How many nights did you guys shoot that? The scene it's incredible.
Yeah, it's, I don't know exactly how many nights we were, 5, 6 nights to put that.
We got rained out.
Yeah, and we were some partial nights, and then we get rained out. But yeah, I mean, it's like Jeff said, it's a lengthy. I mean, in real life, it was a very lengthy sequence, and obviously a lot of moving parts, and pyrotechnics, and Pete does an awesome job as a director of. I mean, the first thing he pitched to me, just as a director to an actor, not even about the particulars of Jeff or this story, was, here's how I work. I never put down a mark. I mean, usually when you're making a film or a TV show, that you rehearse and you block it, and the cameras come in and they put little pieces of tape, and this is where you stand, and then you walk over here and you got to stand by this piece of tape, and blah blah. And when Pete said, I don't put down a mark, I was like, oh. I want to work with this guy. just the freedom of the improvisational kind of nature of it is just it just makes your job easier as an actor.
That begs me to ask, and I had him and Mark here a few weeks ago, and I failed, I think, to ask him this because the other guys were there. But how do you go about? How did it feel he went about shooting an action sequence that, is 8.5 minutes, about 8.5 minutes when you get to the movie, takes 5 days to shoot, but at the same time feels chaotic and documentary-like? How planned and how, compared to doing other action sequences in movies, how planned does it still feel?
Well, I mean, still, you're keeping it safe, So they have, they got top-of-the-line pyrotechnics guys doing. I mean, they're blowing cars up, and they're not, I mean, there was... I'm not sure if I could say 100% no CGI, but I mean, there was a shot where we're doing, okay, JK, in this scene, we're going to have this car that's 12 feet away from you. It's going to blow up and go flying in the air, and you're not going to have to pretend, that you're falling away from an explosion. You're going to feel some heat. There's going to be stuff coming down on you.
Like,
it's safe.
But I want to pretend. Yeah. I like pretend. I'm an actor.
Pretending is pretty. It's what I do for a living, so I don't mind pretending. But obviously they're keeping it safe, and the vast majority of the time, of course, they had stunt doubles there, but the vast majority of the time, Jeff already told this story before today, where there was, he ended up hopping through a bunch of backyards and hopping fences, to get around and get an angle on the bad guys, and of course they had a stunt guy all set up. Okay, JK, this is going to involve hopping over a fence. So we have a stuntman for that part of the sequence.
12 feet away from a blown-up car.
Did this guy jump over a fence? Because if he did it, I think I can jump over a fence. And yeah, maybe for this stuff, there actually was one moment where Jeff came very close in real life and in the movie to getting decapitated by a moving vehicle that was trying to run him over, and he barely got out of the. I mean. He tells the story, he could feel the breeze of this SUV flying by at 30 miles an hour or whatever, trying to kill him, and he barely got out of the way. And when we were
The car that was driven by Johar, right? As he was
by
as
the
he
younger
fled?
brother.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. He admitted that myself and there were two other officers, Officer Joe Reynolds and Sergeant John McClellan, after I had tackled him, they came and were attempting to handcuff him with me, and he was still resisting. And Officer Reynolds looked down and he says, you know, somebody's getting back in the car and he's turning it around. He's saying, he's coming at us, he's coming at us. And Officer Reynolds and Sergeant McClellan backed off, and I grabbed Tamerlan by the back of the pants and I'm trying to drag him out of the street. And, you know, I ended up falling back just as the vehicle was going over the older brother. And he ultimately admitted that he was trying to kill the three of us. That's why he drove like he did and ended up driving over his brother.
Now I have to ask. You say you'd never fired your service weapon before this, right? You'd pulled it out. Clearly, you've never been in a situation like this before. You said most shootouts end 15 to 20 seconds. Sorry, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, no, that's correct.
Do you hold on to these memories? Is this something that you find still affects you and pops into your head every now and then, or is it something that you can kind of compartmentalize?
I think I compartmentalize it. It doesn't haunt me, you know, and you can't help but think about it periodically just because of the media. Periodically something will be brought up about it, for the first 6 months after this shootout happened, I remember talking to somebody and they said to me, do you think about it? And I said, well, I can't help but think about it. I see their faces all the time. And they said to me, oh my God, you're seeing their faces? And I said, yeah, we're on TV, I hear they're on the radio, and I can't help but think about it. But I've pretty much put it out of my head. It does pop in periodically. Something will trigger it for some reason or another. But, I don't have any regrets. I don't let it haunt me. I consider them, they were a couple of animals for what they did, and they got what they deserved.
Absolutely. Would it haunt you? It haunted me, JK.
Clearly, the guys that have the constitution to do what Jeff did that night, it's a special breed, and I think pretty decent at pretending to be that kind of a guy, but.
But not jumping over a fence. You need a stunt guy.
No, the jumping over the fence I did do.
He jumped the fences.
The only thing they wouldn't let me do was the thing where the car narrowly misses mowing me down, and we were actually Eric Heffron, the first AD. They were going back and forth between whether they were going to let me do that one section of the movie where there's a SUV barreling down at me and you have to bail out of the way, and I, finally Pete said, look, dude, there's no way, you're not doing it. We're bringing in the stunt double, and, the guy's got to earn his paycheck sometime. And the shot was all set up, and then Eric kind of sneaks around the corner, and he goes, JK, you want to do it? And I was like, yeah, let's go. Okay. And I start getting into position. Pete comes around like the assistant principal. Get out of there! We got you. So they did it with the stunt double, and I'm telling you, it was one take, and that car missed. Of course, I can't remember that guy's name. He was awesome, the stunt double. But that car missed him by less than a foot, going 35 miles an hour. I mean,
yeah, it was true to life.
Yeah,
it was more like inches they missed him by. It was, it came close in the reenactment.
Let's open up to the audience for some questions. Does anyone have any questions? Right here, sir.
Hey guys, so I got to see the movie and it was amazingly done. I was wondering if you got to talk to any of the residents in Watertown, and how do they feel about having to revisit some of those events while you guys were shooting?
Well, most of the filming, reenacting the shootout and stuff was not done in Watertown. A vast majority of the residents were in favor of it in that immediate neighborhood, but there were some that said they were too traumatized to have that going on in the neighborhood. So, Peter Berg and the rest of the people involved in putting this film together decided, rather than, put those people that said they were traumatized through it, they decided to move to another community to do the filming.
Even if you're not traumatized, 8 nights of bombs and blanks, I think. I don't know about this, guys. Next question.
Hello, my question is for Jeff. I just wanted to know, did you have any reservations when you heard that the particular shootout scene would be filmed in a Hollywood movie? And what was your honest reaction when you heard that this was going to be made into a film?
It was an odd thing to have, Hollywood want to portray me in a movie. And, as far as having, number one, that became, I consider that an honor that they did do that to me. But, it's, it's just an odd feeling all the way around to have this going on. And I'm not, normally sitting on a stage with a microphone in my hand. I'm usually out patrolling the streets. So.
Yeah. I kind of want to ask, what's your press week been like so far, Jeff?
Well, this will probably be my last hurrah today. So I'll be flying back to Boston tomorrow, and
You'll be suited up tomorrow and out on the street?
4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll be to work.
Unbelievable. Let's hear a round of applause for Jeff before we move on. Honored, man. I'm honored to have you here, knowing that you're going back tomorrow and suiting up. It's incredible. I think I have time for one more question right here.
Hi, Jeff. I think your accent is really cool, and I was wondering how JK managed to pull it off.
It's amazing how consistent Jeff is with that dialect, isn't it? Yeah. Well, for me, it was a combination of, and it is an intimidating dialect, and I've done a lot of different ones, accents and dialects before. But we had a coach, a professional coach that we worked with, a local woman who, helped me sort of prepare for it. And then it was just, listening to Jeff and because anytime you're doing an accent or a dialect, it's not, there's sort of this, this is the generic, this is the basic sound, but, you're playing an individual guy too. So, to whatever extent I was successful in doing that, it was something that I focused on, and worked hard on. And then with Pete, of course, you're improvising 90% of the time. So it's like you can prepare what's on the page, but that's going to go out the window anyway. So there was that scene outside the bar. We were, and the other two actors were local guys, so they weren't worrying about a dialect. They were just improvising and having fun. And we'd finish a take, and Pete would go, "Yeah, all right, that was good." And I was going, "Yeah, it was good, except I sound like I'm from Michigan, So let's go back and try it again."
Jeff, were you worried about JK's accent? Were you like, oh God, they're gonna get an actor in here, he's gonna like Goodwill Hunting my accent up, it's gonna be ridiculous?
Wicked smart.
Yeah, we're having clam chowder. No, actually, they had a dialect coach come to my house, and she had me reading poems and short stories, and she was tape recording the whole thing, and she would pick up on certain words and how I was pronouncing them. And she said at one point, "Your Boston accent is not that strong." Maybe it is to you people,
really
but
strong
when you say not that strong, those are words.
But she said, she's talked to other Bostonians who it's really, really pronounced, and she said it's going to be easier for JK to be able to do the Boston accent based on my use of the language and my accent.
And he does an incredible job. I got to let the two of you go. Patriots Day is out in New York and LA, and it's out nationwide today. Go see it. It's a wonderful. They did an incredible job. Congratulations, guys. Jeff, thank you so much for being here. It's an honor to have you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.